Well, we've already read all the materials because we knew you were coming, so we looked them up.
Oh, no. Oh, no. You put me on the spot.
Communication, affirmation, my mind just went blank. Giving of gifts sometime. That's enough, right?
5 love languages. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Now I want to encourage you in this second session also to use your viewer's guide, and you will be not only hearing some things but seeing some things. And I want to encourage you to use your viewer's guide and take some notes on what we're saying. It'll make it easy for you to pass it along to other people. Now this hour, our topic is the in-love experience. When young couples come to me for premarital counseling, I will sometimes say to them, now let's see, why do you all want to get married? Whatever else they tell me, they always give me the big reason. And the big reason is always the same. What do they say? We love each other. Isn't that sweet? And then I ask them a very unfair question. I say, now tell me, what do you mean by that? And if they haven't been holding hands, that's when they'll reach over on the couch and hold hands. And look at each other and smile and giggle and look around the ceiling and come back to see if I'm waiting for an answer, and I am. And whichever one talks the most, and always one does, one of them will say, well, oh, you know, and I guess I know. I remember 30-some years ago, I went to my mother, and I said, Mom, how do you know when you're really in love? And my mother said what many mothers have said through the years. She said, son, if it's real, you'll know it. Now, folks, I like my mother, but that didn't help me at all. And the fact is, we don't help young people very much in our society. Everybody seems to agree that the main thing you want to make certain of is that you are in love. Because if you are in love, it's going to work. But if you're not in love, then it's not going to work. But nobody helps us decide what it means to be in love. Now, I've heard many definitions which try to get at what most folks mean by this in-love experience. I read one that said, love is a 4-letter word, composed of 2 consonants, L and B, 2 vowels, O and E, and 2 fools, you and me. Some truth to that. I read another one. She said he held me tightly. Chills ran down my spine. I thought it was love, but it was just his popsicle melting. But the one I like best is the old jungle animal hunt. You remember how they did it? You dig the hole in the ground about 5 feet deep, 3 feet wide, 5 feet long. You camouflage the hole with sticks and leaves so the animal can't tell there's a hole. The animal is walking down the pathway, minding his own business, going to the water hole. He comes to the trap and he falls into it. We even say we fall in love. And that's just about the way it happens. You remember? Come on, gang, you're not that old. Do you remember? You guys remember the day you were walking down the hallway and this gal came out of biology class and you said to yourself, must be a transfer student. Never seen her before. You don't even know her name yet, but you already feel it. In our society, this experience is something that you feel. It is a feeling. In fact, some have said, love is the feeling that you feel when you feel a feeling like you've never felt before. It is basically a feeling. It begins with what I call the tingles. We fall into the tingles. We all have inside of us something that I like to call a little love alert system. It's somewhat like a smoke detector. And when you meet certain people, they give you a little tingle. It's a wonderful feeling. I am not opposed to the tingles. I just like to say to young people, you know, please don't haul off and marry the first person you get the tingles for. This thing's so good, you ought to feel it 4 or 5 times before you get married. And you should check in a few other things along the way as well as having the tingles. But this experience, this emotional experience that I'm calling the tingles, is really what motivates people to date. You don't just ask anybody out for a hamburger. In those days, you remember? You have to have a little tingle to ask someone out for a hamburger, right, guys? And you also know that sometimes when you go out for a hamburger, you lose the tingles the first night. You find out they dipped snuff, and you lose the tingles. I mean, the tingles are gone, and the next time they call for a hamburger, you're not hungry. I mean, you just don't want to be with that person anymore. You lose the tingles. But other times, when you go out for a hamburger and you come home, you can't wait to go out the next time. I mean, it is really tingling. And so you go out a few more times, and the tingles get stronger. And one night, when the moon is right, one of you will say to the other, you know, I think I could love you. And the other may say, now, just a minute, I told you this was just a friendship. I told you from the beginning this was just a friendship. And if they say that, you go home and say to yourself, oh, me, how could I have said that? Oh, what a fool am I? But if, when you say, I think I could love you, they say, what would be so bad about that? Then you breathe deeply and you have a wonderful evening. And a month later, when the moon is right again, you actually say the words, I love you. And they say to you, I love you too. Woo! And now you know you got it. You're in love. And then it becomes an emotional obsession. You can't get them off your mind. You go to bed thinking about them. You wake up thinking about them. All day long you think about them. It's hard to study now if you're in college. That's why your grades go down if you're in college and fall in love. Got a test on the War of 1812. Who cares about the War of 1812? When you're in love, you literally get obsessed with the other person when you're in love. And it is accompanied by irrational thinking. Oh, irrational thinking. Such things as he or she is perfect. Oh, never met a woman like this. Never met a man like this. They are perfect. Now, your mother can see their flaws. Your mother will say, darling, have you considered she's been under psychiatric care for 9 years? And you will say, Mama, give me a break. She's been out 3 months. Irrational thinking, like this person, nothing is more important than my being with this person. That's why people sometimes drop out of school and get married, because nothing is more important than being with this person with whom I am in love. And such irrational thinking as, I will never be happy without him or her. It's unbearable to think that I would live without them. That's why when we break up sometimes, it's so painful, it hurts, you think you'll die. Such irrational behavior and irrational thinking grows out of this in-love experience. Now, I've done a lot of study on this. The first question I ask myself, is this a transcultural thing, or is it just a Western cultural thing? So I did some study in the ancient Hebrew culture, and here is what I found. Here is an account in the ancient Hebrew culture of a young man growing up. His name is Samson. Will you listen to this? Samson went down to the village of Timnah, and he saw there a young woman. He returned to his mother and father and said, I have seen a woman in Timnah. Now, get her for me as my wife. He's got the tingles. Go get her. I found her. Now, his mother and father said what all good mothers and fathers say. Isn't there an acceptable woman among your own relatives or people around here that you have to go find someone in another culture, the Philistine culture, for a wife? And Samson said to his father, get her for me. She is the right one for me. Here is a guy who has got the tingles. He went down there and found her, and in his culture, the parents worked out the details. Wouldn't that be great? You get the tingles, tell your daddy to go get her. He might do better than you did. Now here is another bit of poetry out of ancient Hebrew culture. This is found in a piece called the Song of Songs. Now listen to the language of this woman who is in love. Here is what she says. My lover is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. Line up 10,000 men, and he'll stand out above all of them. The woman's in love. Now listen to what she says. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves. His cheeks are like beds of spice yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies. His arms are rods of gold. His body is like polished ivory decorated with sapphires. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of pure gold. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my lover, my friend. Everything about him's lovely. Here is a woman who has found a perfect man. She's in love. That's the way it is. Irrational thinking. Now, lest you think this is one-sided, listen to him. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats. Pretty contemporary, huh? Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn, coming up from the washing. Each has its twin. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with elegance. Your two breasts are like two fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will go up to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. All beautiful you are, my darling. There is no flaw in you. Here's a guy who's obsessed. He can't get this woman off his mind. He's obsessed with this woman. Now, what are the dangers of this in-love experience? Are there any dangers to this experience? You bet there are. Number one, it gives us an illusion of intimacy. We really think that we are intimate. We've only known each other a month, but we know each other better than anyone we've ever met before. It gives us the illusion that we are intimate. That's why when you talk to a couple in love about working on a marriage relationship, it doesn't make sense to them. Working on the relationship? What do you have to work on? Oh, we're in love. I mean, we're already perfect. We're already intimate. You don't have to work on anything. We're in love. And it gives you that sense that we are intimate. Secondly, it blinds us to our differences. This in-love obsession blinds us to our differences. We really can't see the differences that are there. That's why when I talk to young couples before they get married, I say, tell me, what kind of music do you listen to? What kind of music do you listen to? You see, I had a wife come in to me after about 6 months of marriage, and she said, Dr. Chapman, he plays that dumb country western all day long. Well, I bet he played country western before they got married, but she was in love. She didn't hear it. And maybe she's a symphony gal, and he's never been to a symphony. How far apart are we in our taste? How about our values? How about what we think is important? You see, all those things, we're blinded to those things when we're in love. That's why you can have a PhD, fall in love with a girl who cannot read, and they get married and they're in love, and it's going to be wonderful. It blinds us to all of our differences. It also leads to faulty conclusions. Such conclusions as we will never be happy unless we are together. We must get married. We must be together. We'll never be happy unless we're married. And nothing else really matters. All those things your mother says, all those things your friends say, none of those things really matter. What's important is we are in love. And the other faulty thinking is the idea that these feelings are permanent. Isn't that what the movies tell us? Isn't that what the magazines say? Isn't that what all of our friends have told us? That if it's the real thing, it will last forever. That's why you want to make sure you've got the real thing, because if it's the real thing, it's permanent. Dr. Dorothy Tenev, Bridgeport University, Connecticut, did a long-term study on this in-love experience. You know what she found out? The average lifespan of the obsession is 2 years. 2 years, average. Now, if it's a secretive affair, it tends to last a little longer until it comes out in the open. But the average is 2 years. Then you come down off the high. We don't stay obsessed forever. Be glad for that. If we stayed obsessed forever, you'd have to close down business, industry, church, education. You can't get anything done when you're in love. Man told me the other day, said, Dr. Chapman, my job has just gone to pot. I can't get anything done. I can't keep my mind on my work. I'm in love with this girl. That's the way it is. And it leads to the feeling that this is permanent, and if we kept that forever, we would never get anything done. It is a temporary phenomenon. Now, I want to ask you, how does this in-love experience contribute to divorce? I believe it is at the very heart of the divorce rate in this country. Let me give you a common scenario. Here is a young couple in love, and they get married. They are obsessed with each other. In fact, most people who get married are in love. They literally are in love. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. They get married. Then the obsession runs its course, and they come down off the high. And those feelings began to subside, and the differences began to emerge. And now we begin to recognize those things that we did not recognize before. The differences began to surface. In my own marriage, before I got married, I had these visions of what it was going to be like. I was in graduate school, and I had this idea that every night we would be in our little apartment together, and I would be studying. And when I got tired studying, my wife would be sitting on the couch, and I would lift my eyes, and our eyes would touch. Oh, won't that be wonderful? A wife right there in the apartment that I can just look at. Oh. But after we got married, I found out my wife didn't want to sit on the couch and watch me study. She wanted to go down, if I'm studying, she wanted to go down and visit people in the other apartments and meet some of those people. And I'm up there by myself thinking to myself, you know, this is what I did before we got married. Only difference, I was living in that dorm room, a whole lot cheaper than this place. And before we got married, I had this idea that every night, about 10:30, we were going to go to bed together. Woo! Going to go to bed together with a woman every night. Woo! But after we got married, I found out it had never crossed her mind to go to bed with anybody at 10:30. Her idea was at 10:30, you come up from visiting and you read a book till midnight. And I'm thinking to myself, why didn't you read the book while I read the book? Then we go to bed together. And before we got married, I had this idea that every morning when the sun gets up, everybody gets up. But after we got married, I found out my wife didn't do mornings. I mean, You're blinded to all that stuff before you get married. But when you come down off the obsession, the differences begin to emerge. And you get that awful thought. Oh, no, I married the wrong one. Because if I had married the right one, surely it wouldn't be like this. And so what happens when the differences begin to come to the surface, then we are shocked. Because we thought we were intimate. We thought we agreed on everything. You remember the long hours we talked together? We just agreed on everything. We had this sense that we were just perfectly matched. And we are shocked that we have all these differences. And we don't have any plan for handling conflicts because they weren't supposed to happen in the first place. And now here they are, and we find ourselves with all these conflicts. And these conflicts lead us to fighting, verbally, we hope, or withdrawing, depending on our personality. Some people are fighters, and some people just withdraw, and in silence they suffer. And they tell themselves all these stories about, oh, no, I wish I had married the other person. Because if I had married the other person, I know it wouldn't be like this. And we have all this stuff that begins to grow inside, and we find ourselves fighting, or we find ourselves withdrawing. And after a while, we build a wall between the two of us that grows out of these unresolved conflicts. And the wall begins to come up, and we lose our sense of intimacy. We don't feel close anymore. We now feel a great distance between us, and a wall is erected between the two of us. And if you happen to meet a couple at that juncture in their marriage, and you talk to the husband, and he opens up about his marriage, I can tell you what he will say about his marriage. He will tell you about the failures on her side of that wall. He will tell you about the blocks she has placed in that wall. But if you talk to his wife, she will have a different story. She will tell you about the blocks he has placed in the wall. She will say, you want to know what I live with? On the day the baby was born, he played golf. And she will give you a whole string of his failures. And they both live with these conflicts day after day after day, either fighting or withdrawing from each other. And their marriage is empty emotionally. And all the love feelings are gone. And then one of them gets the tingles for somebody else. And the whole scenario starts over. Here is the couple. It started yesterday morning somewhere near you. Their marriage is what I've just described. And yesterday morning he went to work. Could have been her just as easily. 8:30 in the morning, he did what he always does. He went for coffee. But yesterday, as he was getting his coffee, this lady walked up to him and said, "Good morning." Kindest words he's heard in months. Good morning. 8:30 in the morning, and her hair is combed. And she smells good. And right away, he has a tingle. He goes back to work, and about 10:30, he sees her going for coffee, and he gets thirsty. Are you new around here? Oh, what's your name? Oh, where are you from? Oh, you know my friend George? He worked over there. Little coffee pot conversation. And in the next few days, he will arrange for a few more coffee pot rendezvous. And when he thinks that she is feeling what he is feeling, he will say to her, "How about lunch someday?" And so they have lunch together. Just a nice, innocent lunch. But on that first lunch, he will tell her how terrible it is over at his house and how long it's been going on. And depending on how long the lunch hour is, either that lunch or the next lunch, and she will tell him her story. Every woman has a story, a history. Married or single, all women have histories. She tells her history. And then they have a few more lunches. And when he is pretty certain that she is feeling it about as tingly as he is, he will say to her, I know a really nice place for dinner if you would be interested. And if she is, she says, oh, that would be nice. And they go out to dinner, and he will take her to a nice restaurant, one with flowers and candles on every table, a nice restaurant, and they will have a nice meal. And many times after the first dinner, they will have an after-dinner rendezvous. Ooh. And a few more dinners and a few more rendezvous, and he is thinking inside, oh, man, I don't know how my mother is going to take to this. And I don't know about my brother. And he wrestles with whatever he has been taught about marriage through his lifetime. And he struggles inside with what is happening inside of him. And about 2 months later, he says to himself, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. So he's going to leave his wife and go with this lady. Why? I'll tell you what he'll say about his wife. Never did love her. Got married for all the wrong reasons. Never should have gotten married in the first place. Oh, but this lady, she is a 10 plus. Oh, this lady, he's obsessed. And he's leaving his wife because he lost the tingles years ago, but now he has the tingles again. But you see, nobody has ever told him about Dorothy Tennant's study on the obsession. He has the idea that he'll never be happy unless he's with this woman, that nothing else really matters, that if he's with her, he'll be happy. And he is set on being happy and making her happy. And nobody told him that 2 years down the road, he's going to come down off the high. Nobody told him that. Because our society says, oh, if you're in love, you've got to go with it if you're ever going to be happy. And if you've got it, you'll be happy forever. Now, what happens? We're called upon to use our minds. Now, you know why I know that that's not the answer? It's typical, but that's not the answer. You know why I know that's not the answer? Facts. First marriages in this country, 40% end in divorce. Second marriages in this country, 60% end in divorce. Third marriages in this country, 75% end in divorce. The answer is not running. The answer is learning to speak the love language of your spouse and having a rebirth of love on an emotional level. You don't return to the obsession, but you do have emotional love between the two of you. We must learn the love language of our spouse. If you follow the tingles, you could get married 6 or 8 times in a lifetime and end up broken more than one way. The answer is not running, the answer is learning. Now, please hear me. I'm not condemning anyone. I know that in a group this large, we have people who have already been married more than once, and we cannot go backwards. But will you please hear me? We must break this cycle in our country of when we lose the tingles and get it for someone else, we leave this one and run off to this one. We must break that cycle. We cannot go on in this country following the tingles. We have got to learn to break the cycle by going home and learning to love our spouse. Statistically, the best chance for your happiness in life, if you're married, is with the person to whom you're now married. Because you move to another marriage, you carry with you the baggage of the other marriage. And you compound that the more times you're married. We must learn to love the person to whom we are now married. Now, I want to come back, and I want to talk about the tingles. I want to talk about the married individual who gets the tingles for somebody else. Let's go back to the coffee pot. The easiest time to handle the tingles is the first morning at the coffee pot. That's the easiest time to handle the tingles. You see, I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling the tingles at the coffee pot. Really, it's not premeditated. You don't say, I think I'll get a cup of coffee and get the tingles for whoever shows up. No, it doesn't work like that. But there are certain people that there's something about the way they look, there's something about the way they talk, there's something about the way they emote that just gives you a tingle. You didn't choose to feel the tingles, you just felt it. But it's extremely dangerous for the reason I just described. So the easiest time to handle the tingles is the first morning at the coffee pot. What you do is go back to your job, and if you have ever prayed, that's the time for you to pray. Oh, God, you know what I just felt at the coffee pot, and you know the thoughts that ran through my mind. But I thank you that I don't have to follow the tingles. Now guide me as I go home and do my homework. And you go home and practice the 5 love languages. Learn your spouse's language and practice that and have the rebirth of emotional love in your marriage. And that's the day you give up coffee. You don't go back to the coffee pot at 10:30. You give up coffee that day. Now, you can start drinking coffee if they ever leave the company, but right now you break off of coffee. You just give up coffee. You don't play around with the tingles, because the next step is lunch and dinner and the rendezvous, and the next step is leaving this one and going with this one. The easiest time is to do it on the first morning. Don't let it get started. But what do you do if you're already into an affair? You've already had the lunches and the dinner and the rendezvous. You're already obsessed with the person. What are you going to do? There's only one wise thing to do with an affair. You break it off. Oh, but I'll die. No, you won't die. We've studied that too. Nobody in the history of this country has ever died from breaking off an affair. Not one. A lot of folks died who didn't break them off. Nobody ever died from breaking one off. Now, I didn't say it's easy. I have helped 6 men break off affairs over the last few years. Excuse me, I helped 5. The other man left his wife, married the girl he fell in love with, came back to me 9 months later and said, Dr. Chapman, I have made a serious mistake. Yes, but you can't unscramble eggs. But one of those men who broke off the affair came back to me the other day and said, Gary, I want to thank you for helping me when I was involved in my affair. He said, I had gone to all of my friends before I ever came to see you. And every friend I had told me the same thing. They all said to me, man, you're not getting any younger. If you love her, go for it. You deserve to be happy. That's what my friends told me. He said, I will never forget the day I came to you. And I shared with you where I was emotionally. And you said to me, it's a matter of right and wrong. If you want to do right, I'll help you. If you want to do wrong, you're on your own. He said, Gary, I want to thank you for helping me do right. I have never met a man or woman who ever regretted doing right. Not one. But I can tell you this, they are in counselors' offices all over this country who did wrong 5 years ago, who followed the tingles 5 years ago, and now they've come down off that obsession, and now they're trying to get help in that second or third or fourth marriage. Now, I'm glad they're getting help. We need to start where we are. But do you understand what I'm saying? Things would have been a whole lot easier back upstream to work on the marriage relationship in which you are now involved, rather than thinking you're going to find all your answers somewhere else. Well, if you wanted to rekindle love in a marriage like the one I described, that has a wall between the two of them, all the love feelings are gone, and here they are living in the same house, fighting or withdrawing. If you wanted to rekindle love in that relationship, where would you start? I believe we must begin by confessing our own failures, asking forgiveness, and making a recommitment to that marriage. I'm suggesting that we go to our spouse and say to them in our own words, darling, have you got a few minutes? I've been thinking about us. And I have realized that you are not all of our problem. I know I've been on your case about a lot of things, but I have realized that you are not all of our problems. And if you've got a minute, I'd like to share with you some of the ways in which I really know that I have failed you. And I would like to ask you to forgive me. And I'd like to ask you to give me a chance to express love to you again. Hard, yes, but powerful. You understand what you're doing? You're tearing the wall down on your side. You're acknowledging your failures in the relationship. You are confessing those, and you are asking forgiveness, and you're asking a chance to begin again. What will your spouse do? I cannot answer that. Will they listen to you sympathetically? Will they forgive you? I don't know. But I know the relationship will be better because the wall is not as thick now, because you have torn down the blocks on your side of the wall. You have confessed your failures, and the wall is not as thick. And the chances of the marriage being reborn are much greater now because you have taken that first step. But there is another step, and that is you learn the love language of your spouse. The material we covered in session 1. You learn the primary love language of your spouse, and you choose to speak their language. I have seen couples, marriage reborn, that in my own mind, when I first saw the couple and heard of all their conflicts and all their hostility, I said to myself, they're never going to make it. I didn't tell them that, but in my mind, that's what I thought. But I have seen couples where one of them will do what I have just described, confess their own failures, and begin to love their spouse in the right love language. I have seen those marriages reborn. You see, the emotional need for love is so great that when it is met and the love tank is full, that person is emotionally drawn to the one who is filling that love tank. And I have seen marriages reborn that in my own mind I thought they would never, ever be reborn because one person chose to walk the way of love. You see, with full love tanks, we can solve our conflicts. If you reach out in love and fill their emotional tank, and if in time they reciprocate and begin to speak your love language, with full love tanks, we can sit down and solve the conflicts that have come because of all of the differences that we have in our marriage. My wife and I struggled for several years in our own marriage before we ever discovered the truth that I have just shared with you. I tell you, it will revolutionize a marriage. We have to start where we are. If there is a wall, we must tear down the wall. If there is no wall, then we start focusing more clearly on the love language of our spouse. And what happens is our marriage is reborn. Now, we don't go back to the obsession. We don't go back to the obsessed state. But what does happen is that the emotional aspect of love is reborn, the emotional need for love is met, and our love tank begins to fill, and the whole marriage takes on a different emotional climate. Consequently, we are no longer tempted by the tingles at the coffee pot. Why? Because our love tank is full. I believe if we understand the in-love experience, that it is a purely very common experience, but it does not mean that we must always follow the tingles and the obsession. But we can rebuild love in our marriage. I believe that thousands of couples in this country could have their marriage rebuilt if they would understand the truth about the in-love obsession and apply the truth of the love languages to their marriage. And I want to challenge you to do that in your own marriage. And I want to challenge you to share these ideas with your friends. Maybe you will want to loan them the video. Maybe you will want to invite them to your house to view the video. But I want to challenge you to share these ideas with your friends. Thank you for being here. I hope that you will not just hear and write in your viewer's guide, but you will go home and practice the truths that we have talked about in these sessions. Thank you very much.